started rolling in to be official. Was there anything that happened in free agency last night that surprised you?
Well, I was kind of surprised by the decisions that the Knicks made. They really brought back the team, and they're paying them a lot more money. Probably the most surprising contract is Derrick Rose getting $14 million a year over 3 years. Now, we haven't seen all of the details on that and whether it's fully guaranteed. They did go out and sign Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier led the French to a victory today and said he wanted to re-sign with the Celtics. Celtics apparently didn't want him, and so he moved on to the Knicks. But the Knicks just sort of spent a lot of money and only maybe marginally got better. And that comes a couple of days after the draft where they traded back in the first round 2 times. And so they had all this momentum. And look, they didn't have a free agent that they could land. It wasn't like Kyle Lowry was ready to come. But they just didn't. They just sort of were blah. And maybe it works out. They overachieved last year. But I thought they were at the precipice of leaping forward. And I'm just not blown away by their free agent period.
So when you look at some of the moves yesterday, what team got exponentially better yesterday?
Well, I mean, the Bulls are swinging hard here. They went after Lonzo Ball, paid him a really big salary, $85 million, and then they went out and signed Alex Caruso to be a quality. They wanted him to do what he did for the Lakers, which was to play both guard positions off the bench. And I am told they are still trying to make DeMar DeRozan happen, which would be a sign-and trade, where they would send Lauri Markkanen to San Antonio, and then DeMar DeRozan would come back in a double sign-and trade to Chicago. Now, that sounds complicated because it is, but if the Bulls are able to pull that off, that's a pretty big influx of talent. And then you have the Miami Heat and LA Lakers in a mad scramble for minimum players. The Lakers may need to sign up to 9 minimum guys, and I know that they've added some guys already, guys like Trevor Ariza, Dwight Howard, Kent Bazemore. Well, the Heat are going to have to sign 7 of them. So if any player is out there who's a free agent and can be gotten for the minimum, I promise they've got the Lakers on line 1 and the Heat on line 2. So far, the Lakers are getting guys, but there's some guys out there we're going to have some competition for, and it's going to get interesting.
What's going to be the average age of the Lakers squad? Like 35? I mean, you talk about maybe Iggy coming out there. They're bringing Dwight Howard back. They seem like they're putting the band back together, but where are they going to get the youth and minutes in this roster?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Lakers are trying something that most teams would not try. They are going against the grain. They are not playing the type of basketball here that so many teams are playing. And maybe it's going to work. I'm really hesitant to brand this too reckless of a decision. But it is a real roll of the dice. And the understanding that I have is like this is what LeBron and Anthony Davis want. They want guys that they're close with, they have a comfort level with, and they're going to try to put together a team. And they say in the NBA, you win with men and not boys. I mean, that is proven year over year. But it's nice to have a couple of boys around.
Talking to Brian Windhorst right now, our ESPN NBA insider. You mentioned the Bulls, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to tuck in my Chicago. I'm going to ask a few questions here. Yesterday, or maybe the day before, you had written that Zach LaVine just wants respect in his next contract, and that could be coming up. He's due for an extension, I believe, this offseason. And so with the moves that they made, are they able to give him that respect that he wants there in Chicago?
Not right now. So Zach is in an unusual situation in that he can sign an extension. He's got 1 year left, but his contract doesn't allow him to sign an extension at market value. So to break it down for you, he could sign a 4-year extension, just like Jimmy Butler is about to do with the Miami Heat. But he could only sign it for about $105 million. I know that sounds like a lot of money, and it sounds like really a good deal for him, but it's actually well below his market value. He probably could get around 150 to 200 on the open market. So it doesn't make sense for him to sign that. So the only way the Bulls can get him to extend right now is to use salary cap space to give him a raise. This is very, very rare, but it is legal. To give him a raise on this year's contract, give him more money this year, and then build a new salary off of that higher contract number. This happens maybe once every 3 to 5 years in the NBA. To do that, you need salary cap space, and the Bulls are out there spending money, not clearing cap space. So What they're going to try to do, obviously, here is bring players in that increases their competitive level and make Zach want to stay. I think it's not impossible, but it's going to be hard for them to dump money to create space at this point.
Interesting. Lastly here, Windy, before we let you go, do you expect to see any moves this morning, later on today? What else is there?
There's a couple of things that are still out there. I mentioned DeMar DeRozan. He is still hanging out there. I mentioned Lauri Markkanen. Keep an eye on Kelly Oubre, who is still one of the bigger name free agents out there. The New York Knicks have some interest in him, from what I am told. And then we still have Kawhi Leonard. All the cap space has pretty much been used. So I think everything points to him remaining with the Clippers, likely on a 1-year deal plus a player option. But until it's done, I'm not assuming it. And then, like I said, the battle royale for minimum contract players between the Heat and the Lakers, that's going on as we speak.
Interesting stuff, right? That's Brian Windhorst, our
Sweet
ESPN
Lou, who got the best wings, baby.
NBA insider, coming to us from
Miami. Here we go.
I feel like the champ already, I'ma win it. I can feel it when I step up in the building, man. They know I'm finna kill it, yeah. Making moves for the top spot. Ball with no limit.
NBA free agency is a fun place, and if you at all walked away from your phone yesterday, perhaps you came back to a boatload of alerts like I did.
Yeah, I had no idea who the hell they was talking about.
It was all over the place, but we expected it, right? Free agency started last night at 6 p.m. Eastern, and per usual, the chips were falling. Yesterday, we had Brian Windhorst on the show earlier, obviously in the morning, because this is when the show is, and he said to us, free agency is all but done, and it truly felt like that. Like, once the clock struck 6, the dominoes were falling, and they were falling fast. This is Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin, presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests join us on the Goodyear Hotline. Bart Scott, Shea Cornett filling in for the guys this morning. Before we hear from Stephen A. Smith, because he had some things to say, a lot of things to say yesterday, let me just tell you some of the point guards that dominated free agency yesterday and where they went to. Kyle Lowry joined the Heat on a 3-year deal via a sign and trade with Toronto. The Heat are also working on a max extension for Jimmy Butler. We can talk more about that in a little bit. And they also reached an extension with Duncan Robinson. Chris Paul staying with the Suns on a 4-year deal, could be worth up to $120 million, as agents are telling Woj. Mike Conley staying with the Jazz, and Lonzo Ball is heading to the Bulls on a 4-year deal, $85 million.
Here comes your Bulls.
Ding, ding, sign and trade from the Pelicans. Please, let's not get overly excited here, but I do like that the Bulls were in the headlines yesterday. Let's start, though, with the Heat and what they did with Kyle Lowry. And first, let's hear from Stephen A. Smith on why the Lowry move doesn't do much for him.
If he were with the Philadelphia 76ers, because you've got Embiid, if you were able to keep Ben Simmons while you still having the Tobias Harris's of the world and stuff like that, and he was added to that mix, his experience, his poise, his defensive tenacity, his fervor, he's from that area. I covered them. I actually covered them when I was right for the Philadelphia Inquirer. This dude is a special player, no mistake about it. But in Miami, as they're presently constructed, I don't see him making that big of a deal in terms of, just basically changing the course of their future in that regard. I don't see it.
Okay, so 1, do you agree with Stephen A? And 2, of the point guards that I listed and where they're going or where they're staying, I should say, which do you like the best?
Well, CP3, of course, is the obvious choice when you think about what he did to change the trajectory and the narrative of that team last year, unlocking DeAndre Ayton, being able to create some leadership. And I think he fits with that team the best. But I think if you talk about, somebody that fits the profile, I like Kyle Lowry, and I like that they brought P.J. Tucker over, too, on a 2-year deal. Mm-hmm. Now you look at that team that already was, tough on the defensive end of the ball. Now they have guys that are straight dogs at every position. And, that gives them Jimmy Butler another score, right? You got Bam Adebayo. They lose, but they bring back Duncan Robinson. They lose Dragic. But it gives them a veteran that can come up and facilitate the offense, more of a natural point guard, as Jimmy's more of a shooting guard, or he plays off the ball. And it gives somebody that can create and get them in the proper sets. They're clearly trying to go with toughness, tenacity, and veteran leadership, and that's what Kyle Lowry brings. I think he would have been better if he would have went to Philadelphia, because I thought it was just a natural fit. But I like the move, but it doesn't do too much for me. So I think CP3 was the best move out there, because it was